Hello, everybody, and welcome to Blue Minds Think Alike. That is a nope, that way. That is a Lou.
That's a Wade?
Nope, other way.
That's a Wade?
There you go. It also looks like you're just doing this. You're just pointing at your own nose, like.
That's a
There we go.
Wade.
There you go. You got it. Yeah. Welcome to Minds Think Alike. I'll be taking over for the co-hosting privileges for Yasmin this week.
Yes.
This episode will actually be coming out on Friday rather than Thursday due to some delays and other things. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to have me spew Dragon Age fanboy at Lou.
Yeah, to convince me to play it.
Because you would play it. Okay, so Lou, I'll let you choose my first topic of discussion. How do I start?
How do you start? How do you want to do this?
How do you want to do this?
Favorite Dragon Age game?
My favorite game? Okay. I'll get to that. But first, although I actually just love it, I should probably explain what Dragon Age is, actually, first off.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a series of role-playing games made by BioWare.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the type of game, it's like a choice-based RPG where the choices you make throughout the story will change people's perceptions of you, certain events that happen throughout the series, throughout the game, and even carry on into later games. The game subsequently will have the ability to. It's kind of finicky with Inquisition, but Dragon Age 2, if you have the game on the same system, you can import your save from Origins into Dragon Age, and it will automatically like data mine your file. Okay, these are the choices you made at specific moments. This is what will happen as a result of those choices in the next game.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah. But it's like a high fantasy world filled with magic, demons, a lot of political and religious strife.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay. So you're saying my favorite game? My favorite game overall, or like just in terms of one aspect, you're saying?
Okay, which one is like the best story in a way?
The best story?
Unless it's all the same.
It's not.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not the same story. It's like a continuation. It's like within the same world and it's the same timeline, of course.
Yeah.
But it's not like you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. It's not that.
Okay.
In terms of story, I used to believe that in terms of story, my favorite was Origins, but as of late, I'm starting to like Inquisition. Like I've never disliked it, but I'm starting to like it.
Is Inquisition the third one?
Inquisition is the third. The first one is Dragon Age Origins. Second is Dragon Age 2. Third is Dragon Age Inquisition, and the fourth is currently in development.
Yeah.
In terms of the story,
to convince me to play it.
Yeah. in terms of the story, I would have to. I'm gonna for now stick with Origins, but Inquisition is a close second, and even then not far behind. Even after that, it was 2.
That's fair.
Because again, I don't want to spoil anything for when you play it. But But the story of Dragon Age Origins is how. Okay, so first off, I have to do a bit of a lore dump for you to understand it.
Go
So,
for.
so in like the ancient history of the world, which is called Thedas. Well, like the whole world and everything, it's called Thedas. And in like the ancient history, like thousands of years before the events of the game, of the first game even, the dwarves had a massive empire that spanned across pretty much all of the known world. They lived in vast like underground cities, kind of like how a lot of stereotypical dwarven societies do in various fantasy worlds.
Okay, yeah, fair.
And all of these underground metropolises were connected through a series of tunnels, is what's mostly described, although the tunnels themselves are as much of a work of art as the cities.
Really?
Yeah, the tunnels were underground, stretched thousands upon thousands of miles across the entire surface of the world, called the Deep Roads.
Okay.
And at some point, again, thousands of years ago, so the entire like the main religion, is called, so basically the main religion of the world is the Andrastan Chantry, which to kind of compare it to Christianity, the Maker is the guy's name. He's essentially God.
Okay.
He's like kind of comparable to what God would be. He's like the one who created the universe, created all things in it, responsible for all that happens and doesn't happen and all that.
Yeah.
And his wife was a mortal woman named Andraste. She essentially is revered in the same way that Jesus is revered.
Oh.
Yeah. So eventually, like thousands upon thousands of years ago, the Maker supposedly lived like among the mortal races. He was not necessarily like one of the people, but he wasn't like secluded from the world in the same sense, again, to reference Christianity, how Jesus might be.
Yeah.
And apparently a group of like, I'm not sure exactly what to call them, many of the various races of men throughout in the world wanted to sort of usurp heaven.
Yeah.
And so they entered, and this is where what I'm saying might be wrong because I might be in the wrong place. They entered what's called the Black City, which was like the Maker's home, and is where like he had lived while he was one of the people, so to speak. And they tried to usurp heaven. But being an omniscient, omnipotent being, the Maker was like, no. And he basically just cast all those men aside. He turned them into these terrible, like blighted, diseased, mindless creatures called Darkspawn, which are essential. Imagine if the concept of disease and sickness had a physical body and a consciousness. That's as much as I can just. That's the best way I can describe Darkspawn without you actually seeing what it is, you know?
Yeah.
And he sent them to the Deep Roads along with
Is there any humans in this?
There's four main races of like humanoids. There's humans, elves, dwarves, and there's a race of like these like they're essentially Goliaths, but they have like these giant horns and they're called Kunari.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the nations in the world is called the Tevinter Imperium, and there were supposedly 7 ancient gods that they worshipped. They were kind of also part of the old gods were kind of sort of the ones that were leading this failed insurrection against the Maker. And so so he sent the 7 old gods of the Imperium along with all of their followers down into the Deep Roads to become the first Darkspawn.
Okay.
And as a result of all that happening, the Darkspawn just conquered the entirety of the deep roads. Almost every of the great Dwarven cities was lost to the Darkspawn. The Dwarven Empire was just pretty much destroyed. And at the point of the first game, there are only 2 remaining cities. There is Orzammar, and there's the other one which you don't visit in the game. I believe it's called Kalhirosh or Kalhirosh, something like that. Yeah. And so I'm sorry, I'm okay, anyway, back to the story of the first game. You need to understand literally all of that. And so every like several hundred years or so, whenever the Darkspawn, because the Darkspawn are constantly just in the deep roads, wandering, searching, killing everyone, anything that kind of goes down there. Every few hundred years or so, they'll find one of the old gods, because the old gods like slumbering deep in the prisons within the deep roads. Whenever the Darkspawn find one of the old gods, they basically corrupt it with their disease, and it gets turned into what's called an archdemon, which is basically just a giant blighted dragon. And
so that's where the name Dragon Age comes in then.
That's actually not where the name Dragon Age comes in.
Okie dokie then. I will shut up now.
Okay. And when an archdemon is created, a blight is begun. What happens, which is basically where the archdemon leads hordes upon hordes of Darkspawn out of the deep roads up to the surface, and they just ravage the lands.
Blight sounds like Horizon Forbidden West.
A little bit, yeah. And what happens is, and during the first blight, like millennia ago, an ancient order of warriors were founded called the Grey Wardens, and they are the only ones who can stop the blight and defeat the archdemon.
Yeah.
And so every few hundred years, when a new blight begins, the Grey Wardens rise up and defeat the blight. So, Dragon Age Origins, it starts off where, based on your race and class, you have we'll go through one of 6 different opening stories, based on like what race you are and what class you are. Okay,
so do you use the same character throughout all 3 games?
No, you actually don't. In Mass Effect, you use the same character through 3 games, but in Dragon Age, you don't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so Dragon Age Origins, it's the first game of the series. It starts off with, based on what race and class you choose, one of 6 distinct opening stories.
Yeah.
It's like a little short prologue that kind of introduces to like who you are and like where your place in the world is. And
okay, yeah.
Regardless of which story you choose, the commander of the nation that the game takes place in is called Ferelden. Is a man named Duncan. He's one of the Grey Wardens. Through circumstance or whatever, basically like every one of the 6 origin stories has an event with that character that ends up with them getting inducted into the Grey Wardens by Duncan.
Oh, okay.
And so the story, and as this is happening, the 5th blight. There's only can only ever be 7 in total, because there were only 7 ancient gods.
Yeah.
The 5th one is beginning.
What do you mean?
So basically, like, remember how I told you that the ancient Tevinter gods got sent to the deep roads? And whenever the Darkspawn find one of them, the god gets corrupted and the blight begins.
Wait.
Remember?
It froze.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. You're forced.
It
Okay.
froze a little bit then.
Yeah, you were forced to do. Sorry. But
Sorry?
Yeah. But so basically what happens is, like the game starts right as another archdemon has been created and the 5th blight is beginning.
Okay.
And so Duncan has been trying to go around recruiting new Grey Wardens to join the cause. He ends up recruiting your character. And so the game basically follows. Okay, I don't want to get that part away, but it basically follows you kind of leading your other companions around Ferelden, gathering allies and completing missions to gather enough strength to defeat the Blight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I get you.
There's only so much I can say without like giving stuff away, but it's really interesting because it like instills a feeling of like early on, there's a after like your character's introduction, but before like the main meat of the game begins, there's a cataclysmic event, I'll say, that kind of leaves you, for lack of a better term, on your own. And so it really instills a sense of like the fact that you and your companions are sort of in over your head, not really ready or trained for the task you have to do, because the Blight still is out there and still has to be defeated, but you're kind of really the only ones at this point who could do it.
Oof.
So it's really good at instilling that sense of being in over your head, being on your own. And we're not ready for this, but we don't have a choice.
So in a way, Joel from The Last of Us.
Joel from The Last of Us?
Kind of. He's not ready for it, but he has to do it.
It's kind of, yeah, but it's like
to survive.
But Joel has that air of like experience and skill.
Yeah.
That aspect isn't really there at first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just trying to make comparisons.
No, it's all right. I'm the same way. That's how I like react and do things. But yeah, so yeah, it's like really interesting to see how. Yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a moment.
Aren't these games on Xbox?
I know that the first two are on Xbox. I honestly don't know if they're on PlayStation. I know Inquisition is on both. Inquisition's on both because I own it on both. Although I can't, which that's actually a fun thing I'll say while I'm looking this up. Inquisition was released after the release of the Xbox One and PS4.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was released after that time, but I had gotten into the Dragon Age and Mass Effect games long after that had happened, so I'm not really sure the specifics of why, but no version was made of it for the PlayStation 3 or the Xbox 360. Okay. And as such, there's no way to directly transfer your file over.
Yeah.
So what they did was they created a thing called the Dragon Age Keep, which is a website where if you create an EA account, because EA is kind of like the publisher, I think, and Bioware's the developer of the games.
Yeah.
What you do is you go onto the thing, and you can upload your choices.
Yes.
Like I'll say, okay, here's this quest. Which choice did you do for this? And then for this other thing, what you do, and you do that for both the first game and the second game.
Okay.
And then once that's done, you can, if you log in with your EA account in the Keep, and then also log in with the same account within the Dragon Age Inquisition game, you can download that file from the Keep into your game, and it'll import the choices that way.
Dude, that's cool.
It is cool.
Would you say it's an open world game?
Open world? Yes. Open world in the sense of like, okay, I'd say the first two games are kind of like a limited open world where there's like, it's not like Fallout or Shadow of Mordor or something like that, where it's a truly open world where you can literally go anywhere you want to type of thing. There's like set locations you can go to, but there are side paths you can go down, side quests to do, other things like
Right.
that. Like all within like set locations, set destinations type of thing. Like the first two games are like that. And then, well, actually, yeah. So I explained what the first game was about. The story of you trying to stop the fifth blight. The second game, is you play as in the second game you are forced to play as a human for story reasons.
Okay, fair.
You play as Hawk. Hawke. It's an awesome name.
I like
Who
it.
lived in the village of Lothering, which is a village in Ferelden.
Okay.
And the village was destroyed during the fifth blight.
Yeah.
And your family barely manages to escape, where you flee north across the sea to a place called Kirkwall, which is like a
Okay.
city state within a group of city states called the Free Marches.
Yeah.
And so that's where you flee. And the game kind of follows I would say like Dragon Age 2 was not a bad game, but it's probably my least favorite of the three.
A lot of people usually say that about a second game out of a trilogy.
Kind of, yeah.
For some reason. I'm not sure why.
Well, because Dragon Age 2 is an interesting game. I think probably my personal main reason why Dragon Age 2 is my least favorite is because
you have to play as a human.
No, you don't have to play as a female. You can choose between male or female. It's
yeah,
not even.
No, but like a human, you have to play as a human.
No, it's not even that. Like I don't mind that part.
Okay, fair.
Like the reason is because like a lot of the locations, like within the game, you're in a different location. Like you go to this particular cave on the edge outside of the city. And like it has this specific map and looking like that and such. And then okay, you go to a different cave. It's supposed to be that, and it reuses literally the same exact map layout and textures. So effectively, like to the player's eye, it looks exactly the same. It does that with a lot of things, which I mean, if done right, can be okay. But the way it does it, it just like kind of makes it all feel the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the main story of that game is about you playing it's about Hawk kind of living in Kirkwall, dealing with like the various events and such that happen within the city. I would have to do another lore dump to explain like a lot of it. But a lot of it deals with like various various political, religious, and racial like themes and tensions that rise between like different groups of people and such.
Yeah.
And like that part of it does it in a way that's really, really interesting because I can't give too much away.
I know, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine, buddy. But like the entire game takes place in and around the city of Kirkwall.
Yeah.
Well, with the exception of a couple DLCs, but for the most part, it takes place in and around the city of Kirkwall. And it's not until like the end, until like the end of Act 3, it's not as like high stakes or anything as Dragon Age Origins or Dragon Age Inquisition are. It focuses a lot more on like, okay, here's how I'll say it. Whereas Origins and Inquisition kind of focus on the outward conflicts of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Dragon Age 2 takes a different approach, which is focuses on the out conflicts of the world and how they affect the character and their friends.
Oh,
Because
okay.
a lot of Dragon Age 2, depending on what your playstyle is, can be focused on like the relationships between your companions. And you can really get to know the people. And it's focuses a lot more on the internal conflicts and how we deal with the situations of religious conflict, political strife, crazy mad people. And it deals with those as events kind of start to slowly escalate until, for lack of a better term, it just all blows open. Yeah.
Damn.
Which okay. But that's kind of all I can say about the story of Dragon Age 2. I can't really explain Inquisition without straight up spoiling the end of Dragon Age 2.
You're all good, buddy.
I'll say
You're
this.
all good.
Let's just say that the events of Dragon Age 2, like especially the events at the end, basically throw the entire world up on its ass.
Nice.
Like within the world of Thedas, there has always been this like kind of loosely strict religious political order to how certain things are handled. And Dragon Age 2 at the end just flips that on its heel. And when that happens and the entire world is falling apart and all screwed up, and the events and other things that happen as a result of that, how are those things dealt with?
Shit.
Yeah. Because Inquisition, you take the place of a person who's referred to as the Herald of Andraste, who's supposedly like a prophet of Andraste that was like selected to vanquish a great evil type of thing.
Okay, I get you.
For lack of a better term, have to wage a campaign of war and such, for lack of a better term, against a self-proclaimed deity. It's really fun.
I want to play.
Yes. In Dragon Age Inquisition, you can play as a Kunari, so you could effectively recreate Grog. Yes. You can play as a male Kunari, which I do believe you can remove the horns on. You don't have like you when you customize your character, you can make it so they don't have horns. You can give them a beard if you want, and you can make him be a two-handed warrior. See, there, that's how you get Lou to play the games. Tell him he can be Grog.
Grog or Ford?
Could you be Ford?
No, probably not. Half.
You'd have to be a mage to do literally any magic.
Yeah.
No, most magics. But yeah, I like. Yeah.
Hey.
But like, so to sum up like the story of the entire series in first, Dragon Age Origins is kind of the introduction to this world and all the things that it is and is in it, because there's a lot. There can be a lot to take in. And you take the role of a Grey Warden who is freshly recruited, and right out of the way, he kind of ends up being in the leadership role and has to take charge of a monumental task that he is woefully underprepared for, but has no choice but to do it anyway. And so it's basically about having to grow up and be the one to step up very, very quickly. Dragon Age 2 focuses on the conflicts and like the political, religious conflicts of the world and how that affects ourselves and the people we love and surround ourselves with.
Yeah.
And Dragon Age Inquisition is about when the established order of society is blown apart and chaos reigns in many different ways as a result of it. How do we put it all back together?
Okay, fun. Nice.
It's actually now I'm talking about it, it's really, really fun.
Now I have a trilogy I have to play.
I'm sorry?
I said, now I have a trilogy I have to play.
Yes, you do. There also are sex scenes in the game, so that's always fun. It's not like it's not
streamed on Twitch then.
just like say we'll be right back for about 10 seconds.
Yeah, just
and then go back. Hi, we're back.
Yeah, cut to black.
It's not like a not like a pornographic type of thing. It's like, hey, have you ever seen the movie Eternals? Okay, never mind then.
It's probably like The Witcher, to be fair.
Kind of. But yeah, like there are like romance mechanics and such in the games.
That's cool. I like it.
Yes. Okay.
So,
any other questions or?
Who's that character behind you?
Yes. I almost forgot. So this is one of the companion characters in Dragon Age Inquisition. His name is Solus. He is an elven mage. This lovely piece of art was created by our good friend Lou.
Hi.
Yay. I had it signed by the voice actor of Solus, Gareth David Lloyd. And I had my favorite quote of Solus right there. It says, "I would treasure the chance to be wrong once again, my friend." Which is when you get to so at the end of Inquisition, one of the DLCs for Inquisition is called Trespasser, and it's the last DLC that you can play in the game in Inquisition, because what it does is it locks off all of the plots, all of the DLCs and everything, and it time skips 2 years forward after the events of the main game.
Damn. Okay.
And the main function I got from it was to serve as, like, for lack of a better term, a teaser for what Dragon Age 4 will be.
Wow.
And this guy is the most profound and important character in that DLC and in Dragon Age 4.
Holy shit.
And I can't say why this is the quote, but it's like, this quote is specifically, it takes place like when you have to do something that you don't want to do, but you have no other choice.
Okay. Yeah, I get you.
You'll understand what I mean by that when you get to it. It'll be a moment though, because knowing you're like you're the 100% type of game player with a lot of these games, so it'll take you a moment to get to this.
Yeah, Wade. Hence the 14-hour stream I did last night.
Oh God.
To complete Ragnarok.
Yeah. But yeah, and so there's no release for Dragon Age 4, there's no release date yet, but what the developers, like they released joint bits of the teaser trailers and bits of like the development process and such like that. And based on all the information we know, well, I'm not gonna say that part, but I'll say that one of the developers have said in like a video that was released by BioWare has said
Yeah.
one of the things they wanted to explore with Dragon Age 4 is what happens when the people in power don't want to help.
Oh, okay.
Like when there was a great fight and you don't want to help and no one wants to really do anything about it.
Yeah.
Which does have which kind of is a major thing in a lot of the other games. But
Yeah.
given the fact that it's what based on what information we have, it's not like it's gonna be sort of a more of a major thing in the next one. So yeah, I'm really excited for that. Yeah, like I could probably go on for a while about like Dragon Age and like the different lore of it and why I love it. But
Yeah.
that would A, take too long, and B, it would be weird not being able to spoil anything for you. So is there any like final thoughts, questions, I guess?
Honestly, I was going to say who's your favorite character, but that might just give it away.
Out of all the games, honestly, because of the Trespasser DLC, it's gotta be Solus.
Fair enough.
Even though I've only romanced him once of like my like 7 playthroughs. Probably more than that, honestly. I play this
How
game
many?
Okay, of Inquisition. I know that I do know every one of the 6 origin stories I've started it and gone through the entire game at least once for every single one. So it's at least 6. And after that, it gets finicky with the number of times I've had to like restart because the previous 2 times I tried to play through the series, one of them I wanted to romance a specific companion in Dragon Age 2, but I fucked up I fucked up with the choice I made, and their approval was like 5 approval points too low to trigger their quest where you can lock in that romance. And there was literally no other points in the entire act to raise that approval, even 5 points. And there's a bug where you can trigger the quest in Act 3, or you can obtain the quest in Act 3, but you can never trigger it. So it has to be in Act 2. Because you can never trigger in Act 1. It's too early. You have to be in Act 2.
Okay.
And so I'm like, well, fuck. And I didn't have a save that went back far enough for me to change my choices and get the approval back up. All my saves are too soon.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, crap. Now I'm just discouraged now. And so I kind of scrapped that playthrough. And the one before that, I honestly, after you, because this was when you were 100%ing God of War 2018.
Yeah.
You started playing that, and I was watching your stream, and I'm like, well, now I just want to play God of War. And so I just stopped playing Dragon Age and started playing God of War. But I have successfully romanced the said person in this playthrough. I technically haven't finished Act 2 yet. I have literally 3 quests to do, technically. I have to do the last of the main quests, and then there's 2 of the endgame quests. Act 2. And then Act 3 is where it gets fun. But yeah. Anyway.
That's cool.
Yeah. I do know in this playthrough, when I get to Inquisition, I'm going to play as a warrior, which I'm focusing on 2-handed weapons, because there's a specific weapon that you can only get in the Trespasser DLC, so you can't have it for very long.
Okay.
But when I do get it, I just want to say, like, okay, I've used this weapon once. Yes. Well, I did the same thing in Dragon Age Origins this playthrough, because this playthrough, I was a dwarven noble.
Nice.
Was one of the things. I was a warrior who did the sword and shield.
Yeah.
There's a merchant that stays in your party campsite.
Yeah.
One of the weapons he has in his inventory is this really, really good one-handed axe that costs 132 sovereigns, which is basically gold pieces, which is a fuck ton of money.
Is it?
And I'm like, it's a lot. I had to save up pretty much every coin I earned for most of that playthrough just to get enough to get that weapon. And then it turns out it's not even the best weapon in the game.
Yeah.
You can actually in Dragon Age Origins, if you have the Soldier's Peak. Well, I forgot what it's called, but it's the one where you go to a place called Soldier's Peak. You can literally make a sword out of star metal.
Shit.
And that's the best weapon that I've found so far. But in this best playthrough, I bought that axe. I'm like, okay, I've bought the axe. I've used it. I will literally never buy this again because it is not worth the money I spent on it. Considering the fact that literally a random event gets you star metal, you just literally complete the DLC, and then you go to this guy at the place, say, "Hey, can I have a sword of star metal?" Sure, here you go. And the weapon the star metal I got was better than the axe the expensive axe.
Yeah.
And there's like a couple of other weapons and such in that game that I've just found, but I haven't gotten them yet. Yeah.
That's cool.
So
I'll definitely be playing it.
Definitely, it's a very fun game.
I'll let you know when I'm playing it though, because I've got to get through Witcher.
It's true.
Elder Scrolls. Well, Skyrim.
Skyrim, yeah. Okay. Any final thoughts or questions?
Thoughts? It sounds like a very fascinating game.
It is. It really is.
And it sounds like my type of game.
It definitely does. It's like a high fantasy, can be an action adventure game type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely sounds good.
Yeah. Anything else, or?
I honestly think that's about it.
Okay. Well then, I guess that's me talking about Dragon Age. At some point I'll talk about Mass Effect and maybe a Blue Minds review, or or maybe we'll finally do an episode like this.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna try to recreate Yasmin's outro because she'll probably get mad at me for doing it. And I'd probably mess up anyway. But that is Lou.
That is Wade.
Okay, you put it the right way this time. And we will see you for the next episode. Goodbye.
We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.